I love music. I also love being a part of something nerdy and niche, and my body loves that and continues to love that. I think that's why I like Taylor Swift so much right now. And then honestly, I'm like, oh yeah, that's why. Hi, we're Joan and Jamie, two humans in bodies who take care of bodies for a living.
We created this podcast as practical medicine for bodies living through this disembodied time.
We want to invite you to come sit with us and experience the beautiful, loving, complex person that is your body. Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Joan. I'm happy to be here again.
See you.
Good to see you too. Literally to see you, even though the others cannot see. Well, I don't know. They might be watching us on a different medium than their native podcast app where they are listening. So hello, everyone. It's good to see you too. Good to be seen by you. Good to be seen.
Good to be seen. Good to be heard. So I have a question I want to ask you, Jamie.
I think I know what it is.
Are you aware? Yes. How did you experience your anatomy this week?
Oh boy. Well, I fell off of some playground equipment. I'm really, really crushing my new role as a stepmom. Clearly crushing it by, well, I could have made a joke about like crushing some bones in my foot, though that is not what happened. I am pretty certain that what happened is came down at a weird angle at a pretty intense speed onto my foot on that weird angle. So like the kind of like top sort of lateral part of my foot, something happened. I think what happened is was an intense pull and possible tear of some musculature, tendons, ligaments, something of the sort. Nothing too structural, no bone damage, luckily. But boy, did it hurt like hell, which actually is kind of a good sign if you have all that enormous pain right at first, because the body is brilliant. And if it's a really severe injury, like you hear these stories about people, getting attacked by a shark and like their leg is like kind of, and they're like, I didn't feel a thing because of the shock. And so I actually knew immediately when I was like on the ground and I was like, fuck, this hurts. And I was like, ooh, okay, it hurts. That's probably a really good sign. Yeah. So how I have experienced my anatomy this week is by really feeling a lot of sensation that has demanded my attention and noticing. I have gained some clarity from my body about like the how and the why for this injury. And ultimately it was really gracious of her to get my attention in the way that she did and to slow me down. So I've been experiencing my anatomy this week by moving at a much slower pace, by changing my plans and ideas for how I thought my days were going to proceed, and then getting creative about, other opportunities for how to literally and figuratively move through my world while hobbling a little bit on my right foot. Also being willing to experience help and assistance in tasks that I normally would be like, I've got this, I'm fine. So I experienced my anatomy this week through significant sensation in my right foot, and that significant sensation resulting in needing to move through and walk through my life very differently for the past few days. And ultimately, I'm feeling really grateful. In the immediate aftermath, I was a little upset at myself because I had these, I'll just say, I knew that I should not have done what I was doing, and I did it anyway. And so that was also a really good lesson. She was like, I love you. Maybe pay attention next time. So that's me and my right foot. How about you, Joan? How did you experience your anatomy this week?
Oh my goodness. So yes, I'd been reflecting on this question. Lots of little moments, but one that feels significant and meaningful is related to this project that I haven't told you about. So it's fun. I'm telling you live on air. So for my original podcast, The Other Human in the Room, I think it's going to be for the podcast. I actually don't know. So if it never airs, don't hold me to it. But I have this idea to interview members of my family about the fact that there are many members of my family who are physicians like me. Like I am 5th generation physician on my mother's side.
Whoa.
And so, yes, it's just quite a lineage I'm a part of.
Okay, it's on your mother's side. Was it all women? I assume probably not all women at a certain point. Okay.
Yeah. Like it's like my mom, but then her father, and then her father's actually like her father's grandfather, and then that person's father-in-law.
Whoa.
That's as far back.
Damn.
And I learned the specifics of that on Monday, like a couple days ago, when I went and I drove to where my great uncle, who is actually like my genetic grandfather because he's my grandfather's identical twin. That's just a fun little fact. And, you know, in a medical family, one of the things that happens is you talk about who's your genetic grandfather because they're like, you know about genetics.
You have
like,
to.
Yeah, so like cousins or genetic half sisters or whatever. Like we just do fun genetics jokes in our family. So, and he's 97 and Uncle Jack.
Wow.
And I sat with him and interviewed him and asked him about like his career in medicine. And he told me the stories of his granddaddy and that who was a family physician, and then the great grandfather for him. And the experience of doing that, some of it was physically uncomfortable because I had to hold this microphone up and my arms kept getting tired and achy. But that was actually really nice because then I was able to still stay connected to my body. And it was funny, like afterwards, I went to the bathroom and I looked in the mirror and I kind of had this moment of like, because I had in my head this like, wow, this is like one strand of my lineage. These people are like a part of me. And that really hit me. Like my body is made up of parts of them, genetically speaking. And I mean, the science is pretty solid of like the impact of people's experience and how that and what that has impacting on their genetics and what they pass down
and what is expressed through the genetics
and what's expressed exactly, and like having that, and it was really like a profound and also slightly dissonant moment still, because like I always look in the mirror and notice how I don't quite look like the majority of that family because I am biracial. Like my dad is Chinese and my mom, who this family is white from, I learned also Ireland and Scotland and England, like just all different parts of the UK. So I don't see myself. I see my mom and I see my aunts in my Uncle Jack, but I don't see myself. But it was like my body, like I experienced the withness, even though I don't visibly see it as strongly. And also it is there, like my freckles are from that side of the family, the red streaks in my hair and the curls are from that side of the family.
Yeah.
So even actually right now I'm like experiencing it more of like, it's just really touching to know that like the people who have come before are literally a part of me still.
Yes.
And inform the making of me into something new. And that's kind of a cognitive way to experience my anatomy, but like I physically felt it too, especially sitting with him as he was telling me that story. I felt a connection to him and his body and where his body had been that I sometimes have trouble feeling with my family. And so that has been a way I have recently experienced my anatomy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's kind of a lot.
Well, what we're here to talk about today is you and your you-ness and your experience with your body, your experience with your anatomy, kind of in the vast expanse and span that is your life, you know. And it's funny, you know, as you were kind of wrapping up that little share, I'm like, on some level, you were describing your experience of your anatomy being, my arms got really tired while I was doing this thing. So I was really focused on my arms, kind of like with my, like, I was really focused on this part of my foot because there was unpleasant sensation in that area of my body.
Yeah.
But that's like the tiny answer in this larger, beautiful tapestry of a story of how you are understanding yourself to a greater degree. I think this idea to interview your family members is brilliant. I think there's so much to find there. And I also think too, I can imagine that as we're embarking on this project together, and on some level, I don't have to imagine since we have talked about it, like there are ways in which you're holding this tension or building this bridge between like the history that you have inherited with this like respect for and practice of medicine in this particular way, while engaging this curiosity in the direction of bodies and like the subjective nature of bodies, and like the deserved curiosity in the direction of bodies, and the admission that that deserved curiosity necessitates, or kind of that curiosity necessitates an admission that there isn't just one form or expression of medical practice or body care that can be fit onto every single body. And I can imagine that in your background in history, both personal in your family lineage and then also professionally in your training, you probably received a lot of teaching or direct communication that said there is one way, there is correctness and there is rightness, and it needs to be found in order for you to be a good person and to be a good practitioner. Wow, I feel like that leads us so beautifully into allowing our listeners, our audience, to get to know you a little bit better. And even if you wanted to maybe just start us out with sharing a little bit more about that background and history of, sure, how you got to, being a doctor, but really the true way to say it is that you are a human being in a body who occasionally, occupies the role of physician, of practitioner. Yeah. And so I'm curious, and I'm sure everyone else is too, about, what's the history in your relationship with your body of how you got to being the person that you are, that occasionally, puts on the literal and figurative like costume of practitioner. So yeah. Tell us about you, Joan.
I'll tell you about me. Yeah, I was thinking like, what are some, I was thinking I'd at least name the touch points I often feel like are relevant pieces of my history. Like some I already named. So, I've had some of the not nice ways of being asked like, what are you or whatever, but not as often that. But like,
what are you?
The cute little microaggression
Don't
way, or just like whatever. And so in terms of my origin story, which in some ways starts, far back from my parents, but my parents most specifically, like I have a Chinese father and a Caucasian mother, like I said, UK sort of ethnicity, but in Canada for many generations. Other features about the two people who birthed me is that they are both physicians. They are both family physicians. And within my sort of wider family, it's just littered with doctors, basically. Having said that, though, I didn't always think I wanted to be a doctor. I kind of was like, ugh, everyone's a doctor. I want to try and be something else. But over time, I definitely had sort of the features that then as you go through school, people say you could be something like a doctor. Like I would get the highest marks in things. I had an acumen and a drive to do very well in school. And I did quite enjoy learning. And I liked being good and being right and getting the right answer. And those are kind of separate concepts. Yeah. And I enjoyed all of those to different degrees of need to do that. And, it was like kind of a brainer, nerdy kind of, that was my phenotype in high school or whatever, along with concert band nerd.
What did you play?
That was the other phenotype. I played clarinet. And then in jazz band where there is no clarinet, at least the one I was in, I played alternate percussion. So xylophone, which they call vibes in jazz band, which is like way
you
cooler.
Played vibes? You played the vibes.
I was the vibes. I was playing the vibes, baby.
Incredible.
Yes. And then also there was one where I played timpani. I forget why I was on timpani. Cool. That's not jazz. I can't remember. But like, so I was like, I did some of that and really liked music. And then another very core feature of my identity all through my childhood and sort of I'm really imagining my high school self, which is kind of the first time you really are like, this is who I am. Sure. These are my identities. Yep. So I was like nerdy, a concert geek. And then the third one is Christian, like evangelical Christian, very important part of my identity. Yep. From parents from, going to church. I grew up in Ontario in Canada. So it was a evangelical style church. So, my job was to save all my friends, and I was a part of Young Life, which I think is American too. And that's very like in the schools, bring your friends.
Yep. And I'm sure based on what you already articulated about your personality at that age, that was something you were pretty committed to kind of executing the practice of and doing very, very well.
Yes, I wanted to be good. Like there was actually one time where I can say like there was times where I would say the story and I'd feel sad about it, but now I just like have like tenderness and some humor. Or like I went to, it was like the Young Life leader, because there was church where they were like kind of more chill about it, but Young Life was the one where it's like bring your friends.
Totally.
They would make charts. There was a talk they gave once where it was like, here are the people that like look for the popular kids with the most influence in the school. And then they drew like circles out of like kids that were like less popular. They didn't say name names. They weren't naming names, but they were like, really, we want the kids that everyone will follow, and we want to like get them. Like they had like a strategy.
Marketing strategy.
It was a lot. And I just felt so much shame because I wasn't a cool kid. Yeah. And so my like expression of needing like of goodness is that I requested to like meet up with the Young Life leader. And I was like, I don't think I should be the campaigner anymore because I'm not popular enough. I can't serve the mission well enough. And I was crying. I was like really, and the poor guy's like, oh man, I've done something. He didn't like apologize, which he could have, but like he was like, oh no, Joan, like you bring lots of friends.
Wow.
I was good at my job.
The souls you save are valuable too, even if they're not star athletes. Like, wow, this is wow. I was never in any sort of like campus ministry sort of thing. So I'm learning a lot right now about just the culture of these campus ministries.
That one in particular was like really fascinating. And but beyond that, like really, I also like I had a deep relationship with Jesus going on in my mind. He was my best friend. Like it was really, and like I really viewed myself through that lens. So like I would say those are like core parts of my origin story that and continue to inform the good performance, like being good at school and therefore really just like seeking approval and affirmation, especially from like people of authority. There's like, that's a piece that continues to have reverberations in my body to this day. The geekiness and the concert thing, that has reverberations. I love music. I also love being a part of something nerdy and niche, and my body loves that and continues to love that. I think that's why I like Taylor Swift so much right now. And then honestly, I'm like, oh yeah, that's why. It makes sense. And then also like, though I no longer identify as Christian, I would say agnostic. I'm like, don't make me check a religion box. Yeah. I don't want to, I'm personally not on a journey to uncover or discover any particular religion. I feel good with sort of spiritual practice and actually my body and my relationship being the core way I have a spiritual practice. So, but having said that, reverberations from the teachings of that and connected with home life being all kind of wrapped up in that. Yeah. All of those are still like a piece of what my body brings up for me in different situations today.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I'm learning so much I've known you for almost 2 years and I'm learning so much about you. I didn't even know you I didn't know you played the vibes. That is
vibes.
Wow. Man, this really does illuminate a lot about you and the way in which you, especially during our time working together in the coaching context, the way in which you would articulate your experience of how you showed up and desired to show up as a physician and as an educator, basically in any of the spaces where you hold like a position of authority in any sort of way or hold a position as a guide for people. It really makes sense. This core drive within you, this kind of true north within you to do it with excellence, to do it well. And it feels like what I'm hearing you describe about your early developmental experience has been like sharpened and even made I don't quite know how to say this, but made more sovereign by you coming into this different sort of alignment of like, I don't need to be perfect, but I do want to be excellent unto what excellence means in my own values, like what integrity means. Yes, for me. So how I show up, I want it to be in alignment with my highest values, not someone else's necessarily.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, that's quite the journey of growth and maturation in the human experience at all. And I just love the way that is expressed in different people's lived experience based in like, you know, what they do as a career or like the other expressions of personhood and identity of like how they show up in their relationships, how they, you know, show up in their hobbies and their interests. And as I was hearing you share that, I was also, especially with what you said at the end of kind of this this piece of you that you recognize has been in you for a really long time of like wanting to be good by pleasing the people or being approved of by the people that you have perceived to be in authority over you or have like articulated to you that they have some authority over you, whether that's actual people or like, you know, the God of your understanding at the time. I'm thinking of, you know, conversations you and I have had about what that means for you in like this season of your life as you are beginning to explore these new conversations inside of this context. And yeah, I want to make sure that we get to that and talk about that in a little bit. But before that, I want to kind of stay in this like origin story of Joan Chan. This might be a funny question, but this is what we're here to do. So like, when do you remember first experiencing your anatomy, first really being in your body?
Yeah. I had time to think about this in that we thought that this was a good question to ask each other. And like, in one way, like every memory I have from my childhood is me experiencing my anatomy. Because like, especially the memories I remember are, first of all, you in your body, because you're always in your body. And they're often an intense emotion, and that's why you remember them. But I think though, I wasn't aware I was in a body yet though. Like not really.
Yeah.
You know, like in movies where you're just seeing the view of the person, like first person perspective or whatever, like in video games, how they have that.
Yes.
I was like doing that. I wasn't considering the vessel in which I was looking out of.
Looking out from. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And especially like one of the features of both, I think, being pretty brainy and then also my best friend was, I do think he was imaginary, but I don't mean that in disrespect to people. Like Jesus, I think he was imaginary, but not in a way that offends if you don't, you know, like it's okay. But like I'm like, that was my imaginary friend who was really just me that got me through all that stuff. Like that's kind of what feels most correct to me. I just feel like, you know, tender because Jesus means a lot of things to a lot of people. And that is good. So anyway, so that means I spent a lot of time up in my head and I was a daydreamer and I was very frequently talking to God in my head and thinking or daydreaming about a boyfriend or whatever. Like I spent so much time in my thoughts and that was sort of encouraged in some ways because the body was evil and bad and sinful. I really resonate.
Yeah, totally. I resonate with that on so many levels. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that made it extra that I like, even when I had a sensation in my body, it's like, that's probably sinful. So like I would like
shut it down,
zip it away.
Totally.
Yeah. So that means it took me quite a long time before I can say I like consciously experienced my anatomy. I really like when I looked back at my memory, I know for sure, I think it is the earliest time. It was like about 6 months after I gave birth to my first son.
Yeah.
And I think I had read a few books about embodiment. I'd read yours by then, and I think I'd read Hilary McBride's like mutual friend acquaintance. I'm pretty sure I read that during that first mat leave too, and sort of that was the fresh one of like, oh, I'm in a body. There's this idea of embodiment and that I am in a body. And what I did is I took myself to the spa because I was about to go back from my mat leave back to work, and I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna leave my baby with a family member and go to the spa and have a nice spa day. And the kind of spa treatment I'd never done before, but it was the kind where they like scrub you down and then they shower you off.
Wow.
I didn't actually know specifically I was going to get that.
Like a human car wash.
It was like, but it was so intimate, like this. But sometimes those are really weird. I've had things like that more recently that actually were like horrifically strange. But this one felt like she was very sort of like respectful or very gentle. And the thing that I really noticed though, so like, especially when she was rinsing off the scrubby stuff, like she would pick up my foot and be rinsing my foot. And I would really think about how that was my foot.
Wow.
And really think and offer so much gratitude to all of the things and all of the way, like all that we'd done together, me and that foot, especially in recent days with the new activities of holding my baby. And he slept well if he was in motion. So me and my feet, we walked many a kilometer around these hills in where I live to keep him asleep. Yeah. Like those feet had done some walking.
Wow.
And so really and greeting each body part, like it went up to my legs, definitely like when she was doing kind of my belly area, that was like very emotional because that's like where I'm going to get tearful even now, where he grew and they came out of, and that was so powerful an experience, and just feeling the gratitude and the miles we'd walk together. That's sort of like that sense that I had, and really feeling connected. And like, there's this way that people talk about, like, sometimes our culture dismembers us and disembodies us. And so then we remember, not only like recall, but like we literally feel like we are knit back together. And that is how I felt in that moment. Wow. I honestly think for the first time, especially in that conscious way, I'm like, and here I am, and here's my body. That was the first moment of like, oh my gosh, I have two arms. And holy crap, they do so much for me. Yeah. And I do so much with them, and we collaborate on so much. And you're like, if you like look at your hand and you're like, what this hand has done today, like it's a lot, like, and there was something that really touched me. And so I would say that was my first like conscious experience of my anatomy, where I was like genuinely experiencing her. Yeah. And it felt so, so good. And so like spiritual, honestly.
Wow. Yeah. Of course it did. Wow. I have so many thoughts, questions in response to that. Cause the first thing I'll say is that in my years of facilitation and talking to people about their experiences with their bodies, and oftentimes framing the initial approach to the coaching that I do, the facilitation that I do, in this language of like, we're gathering, and this, we did this together too, of like, we're gathering your relationship history with your body. A lot of people that I have worked with over the years have articulated that the first time they consciously remember experiencing their body was either during pregnancy, during birth, or during postpartum. And I could talk for 30 minutes about like everything I've heard from people and how they've articulated like why that is the case and but we're here to talk about you. So the question I want to ask you, articulating those few noticings, is what I notice is that this is an experience you're describing in like the 6-month time frame after your first pregnancy and birth. And so what I'm hearing you not say is that the first time you really experienced your anatomy was through, and I'm sure that you did on some level, but it's interesting to note that there was this like, like profound, like I'm all here, I'm knit back together in the postpartum. And so I'm curious how that like, oh, I'm here. And that kind of awakening, that experience of your anatomy, if there's anything you would maybe want to or like to say about how that then created a shift or a difference in the experience you had from first pregnancy to second pregnancy, or like first birth experience to second birth experience. Cause I'm just hearing that this monumental shift happened in between those two.
Yes. It's interesting. I don't think I necessarily put together that, yes, this event happened between them, because absolutely, like my experience of my second pregnancy, it wasn't that now it was fully embodied in every
Sure.
moment. I
Yeah.
was connected with the her that is my body. In fact, a lot of that pregnancy, well, what I'll say about my first pregnancy is it was still like, wow, this is wild. Wow, this is cool.
Mhm.
But I still was viewing and treating and speaking about my body as like a car, if you will,
Yeah.
in that it's a place that gets me from A to B.
Yeah.
And I got to get places fast because I'm like at this point, I'm practicing family medicine.
Yep.
I'm seeing patients. I'm seeing people all the time. And I remember stopping and being like, we got to figure out another way to grow these humans. This is ridiculous. Like, I can't do my job. I can't do my job. And there's something that's like relatable, funny. And also like, it means like I thought the most important thing is I had to keep doing my job.
Yeah, and we can talk about that at length later too, about that whole thing. And yeah, you're not alone. I know you know this, but you're not alone as a physician, as a practitioner who has operated under that for sure. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And so it was a neat experience that was often inconvenient. And even like, I mean, there's unfortunate ways that even patients can treat you once you become pregnant. It's like, oh, what am I going to do without you? And now you're like having, it's just like this problem.
Yeah.
I didn't fully view it as a problem, but that was a piece of it. And then other parts were like, this is cool. He's kicking me. I'm so excited. Like it was a mixed bag. It was a mixed bag. In my second pregnancy, it was still a mixed bag. I was definitely more connected with my body. And also, like, I'd done it before. So everything wasn't like scary and new. I was like, okay, I know these rhythms. It was like just exciting to see the belly grow, exciting. Like I could have more sort of peace and not as much anxiety about it, having done it before.
Yeah.
But then halfway through my second pregnancy was March 2020. So I was like, visibly becoming pregnant at the beginning of the COVID-19, like the portion where it became a worldwide phenomenon.
Wow.
So that then took over. I then lived in my head very intensely for the majority of the rest of my pregnancies. And I would have moments of coming back to my body and still like connecting with him too. But like there was a lot of fear, uncertainty, and also just a lot of need to focus because everything was changing. And I was like, part of the change and definitely intense anxiety about like what it would mean in terms of even like, could my husband come with me? Like even sort of logistic things, like there, all of that was unfolding and it's just like, so like that preoccupied the mind.
For sure.
Having said that though, my second birth experience, like my first experience was good. I was like, I'm going to go without pain medication just to see. And then I changed my mind and then it was too late. And so then it was, the anesthesiologist had already gone home. So then ended up going
off the clock. I mean, I respect it. You're like, clock out, go live your life. Sure. Yeah.
And the next one wasn't coming on. It was like one of those things. So I was like, okay.
Wow.
And so I did that. Wow. But one of the features with pregnancy 1 was that I pushed for 2 hours. And I think I was getting fatigued and I got a sense at the end, like actually the family medicine, I had a family physician, OB, if you will, like she's a family physician who delivers babies. And she asked me to reach down and like touch Felix, my first son's head. And I realized it was literally there. And I was like, that's bonkers. And then that gave me, because I think I just wasn't figuring out how to do it.
Yeah.
And once I touched his head, then I was able to push him out.
I love the story. I love the story. I love the story so much.
It was that was neat.
Yes.
I haven't thought about that in a while. That was cool.
Ooh.
Second pregnancy, first of all, it was a second pregnancy. Everything happened way faster.
Sure.
I had come from a line, like my mom gave birth to my younger sister in the car on the way to the hospital because we have fast births. And also she was in traffic in Hong Kong. Sorry for another time. But
my God.
Anyways, like I was like, this is going to happen fast. And it happened fast, but it wasn't a hospital. We got there, but like checked in at 12:30. He was out by 1:09.
Wow.
And like dilated a lot in that time.
Totally.
Very intense, very painful, but I didn't experience it as pain. And that is because I had this sense of connection to my body. I wasn't like, the main thing I kept picturing was that my spine was a tree.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how to describe, that's just literally the image that was coming to me and like the strength of my backbone and like the power. And so it meant that I was obviously experiencing very intense sensation that I wouldn't have called pleasure. It was pain, if anything. But the first pregnancy, I was like, ouch, 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 ouch. And this, I wasn't ouch. I was just like, yes.
Resistance versus surrender.
Surrender. Yes. And I just kept like imagining giving the energy to this tree and this tree having so much strength.
Yeah.
And I pushed him out in 2 pushes.
There you go.
So
amazing.
There's multiple reasons why. I mean, the path had already been made, etc. Like lots of reasons. But I do think a piece of that is resistance versus surrender, like exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
It changed the amount of pain I can remember feeling for both of them, which is just, you're smiling so hard.
This is my shit, Joan.
I know I can.
And also, I didn't know this. We've never talked about this before. I've never really heard you share the specifics, like these detailed specifics of your birth stories. And I'm obsessed with hearing people's birth stories. So, I'm just delighted. This is wonderful.
So
I love getting to know these parts of you.
Yay! Good.
Well, let's take a little break, and then the teaser from a few minutes ago of this element of self that you articulated earlier about this kind of like being good by pleasing authority. I'd love to hear more and hear you share more, and let our listeners hear you share more about how that's kind of currently showing up for you in your life. So we'll take a little break, and we will be right back. If you'd like to connect with us, we invite you to join us on Substack.
exanatomy.substack.com is the home for the Experiential Anatomy podcast. It's the place to stay up to date and never miss an episode, even if you're taking a break from social media.
You can subscribe for free, and you can contribute to the sustainable creation of these conversations by upgrading to a paid subscription. Paid subscribers get access to special content like audience Q&As, bonus episodes, and other supportive materials that we've created along the way.
We love it there, and we hope you will too.
Okay, welcome back, everyone, and welcome back, Joan, as we continue our fun little journey of getting to know you. So all of this brings us to the thing I have felt most excited to hear you speak about today, because just to disclose a little bit, after we recorded our first episode, you sent me this it's hard for me. What I want to say is my favorite voice memo you've ever sent me, but I feel like I've said that about all of them. It's hard. It's hard to distill down. But about this space you currently find yourself in, of like acknowledging this history you have of what has kind of shaped your personality in ways that are beautiful and beneficial, and then also like in some ways that maybe are sometimes like holding you back from being as like big and impactful as you could be, or just like having the most fun that you could be having in your experience.
Yes.
Very open-ended inquiry of just anything that feels good that comes up that you would like to name about the experience you're finding yourself having right now as we embark on this project together.
Yeah. So when I sent you that voice memo, the reason I sent that voice memo to you was I noticed in our recording of our first episode together, we were sharing things about each of our experience, including some of our like positioning and some of what's exciting us. And I noticed that there were points where sometimes you would describe something that's exciting you, like your belief that we can heal anything. And when you started talking about meridian lines, those points particularly, where there was something that came up for me in my body and in my mind. And what it was is I specifically started picturing certain public figures that are physicians that part of their online persona is to like take down, woo, quack. Sorry, these slurs. Like they're not kind ways to describe people, but like this is like the kind of language that's used for things that are that don't count as quote unquote real science, pseudo versus real, Western versus Eastern, which is really not great, problematic language. That's not actually, but like, like these ways that came up for me. And that makes sense because that is something that is a part of like the culture in which I was raised, certainly in science circles and in the medical training I received. It did actually include like, hey, look, complementary alternative medicines, like what they called it, which is actually, and like I shadowed a chiropractor, but like there was what was taught, but then we often call it the hidden curriculum of medical training.
Wow.
Underneath, everyone's like, yeah, but that's not real.
Yeah.
That's like snake oil or, like those sorts of ideas. And I think what it comes down to is something that I am actively working on shedding is the need to have a singular position of rightness about maybe anything or about almost everything, at least. And I come from like, I guess, a lineage as well as a background. And I come from having thought I needed to be very, very certain about my rightness and be able to defend my rightness in actually multiple categories, like I described, like my high school persona. Both the science part of things, like, no, because that's science and science says this. And that actually took over through university and medical training. But my original positioning of rightness was in direct conflict. It was very tricky, especially in high school, because my first positioning of rightness is that Jesus is real and Jesus is the one and only way to go to heaven. And all of the what are they called? Apologetics. If you remember that, it's like debate team for God. That's like, I think that's what it is, right? Like,
team for God.
You have to have all the right arguments.
Yeah.
And that came shattering down for me in university when I had experiences of people who were good and not Christian and went, uh-oh. And then also all of my friends who had been Christians stopped being Christians, and they had been a real tenant of evidence of my faith. And it all, like, I had an experience of deconstructing what I thought was the truth of the universe through the lens of Christianity. That was traumatic. Probably we'll talk about it a bunch, or not, but like that was a whole emotional time. And then I went to medical school. But the thing that's interesting is because I'd continued to be on a journey of deconstruction and just trying to sort out my faith side of things. Now I enter what I actually recognized was like a kind of whole new set of dogma that was a bit like science is number one, evidence-based medicine, what is and isn't good medicine, even like within medicine, what is and isn't best practice. Like, oh, that's the old way, so shameful. That's an old fashioned, like whatever, like even within things that were technically science or so. I got caught up in it a bit, but it chafed because I'd already gotten out of one club. I wasn't wanting to like sign up for another one that still had all these like shaky conditions of belonging and didn't really add up, like was contradictory. Like there's a lot of similarities, like the religion of medicine, you could say. And the dogma, I like that terminology, dogma of medicine, and the need to be right. There's some really brittle edges to it where people can like that person shouldn't be a doctor, or that's bad, good medicine, right? And so then I went on a deconstruction of that, especially most recently, like even through that second pregnancy I talked about. And that's how I came to start doing restorative medical education and really kind of deconstructing all the pieces that we think we need to have in order to think of ourselves as good practitioners. I've been on a journey of that, and I've continued. And honestly, like my truth is that I still hold tension and am on like a current journey of exploration of what that means about things that have been traditionally kept outside the gates of science or kept outside the gates of real medicine. I have like a whole document. I'm not going to read it, but I like really like after even the voice memo, I was like, what is it that I know to be true? What are the pieces? Like what informs this bodily reaction of like, oh, this is unsafe to put out a podcast where I'm affiliating myself with someone whose beliefs are not going to be viewed favorably by people in my community. And I mean, I think it's possible we have different beliefs that aren't even science, like maybe, well, politically we were from different countries, but like who knows which things we have different. And there's edges there. And that some of this is what was kind of in that voice memo of just like, I'm just naming that I have those edges, but that I'm doing this project anyway, in part because I don't think those edges serve me. Like you said, like, first of all, they are absolutely keeping me from having fun. And so enough of that.
That's the main thing. Yeah, totally.
That's actually the main thing. But also like what happens if I expand the definition of what is helpful? And actually, so I'm not going to read my whole thing, but when I was rereading the document, I want to read what I wrote at the top because I feel like I still want to so when people are listening and some of them maybe are like, what about science? What about evidence-based medicine? And I mean, you can always message me and I'll talk through all the nuances of what I think. I think that the scientific method is helpful and that it is a useful way to show if something is likely to be true in the future. If you study and see if it's often true over, that's one way to find a kind of truth.
Yes.
But I'm also just sort of expanding. Maybe we don't then have to say that's all of the truth.
Yeah.
Maybe. Right. So that's one way to say it. And then I want to read this other thing. And then I think then we can have a chat about it or whatever. So, okay. When it comes to what I view as truth, I mostly practice agnosticism. So even with medical knowledge that I've been taught or even what I've experienced personally, I've been in practice for over 10 years, I also practice leaving space for surprise and discovery rather than holding tight to rightness.
Wow.
I still practice medicine with confidence despite this, but now my confidence is mostly in bodies and their own knowledge of their goodness rather than confidence in me being right.
Incredible. Wow.
So that's my position statement.
I'm gonna need a second. I'm just imagining if okay, so you know the Hippocratic Oath, duh, of course you know it.
Yes.
I'm just imagining if there was an addendum to it and it was that sentence and what that would do to all aspects and expressions and avenues of health and human care, which is the entire reason why we're creating this project in the first place, is because you and I really, really deeply believe in that. I mean, that's why I'm so enchanted by that sentence that you just shared, because I'm enormously aligned with it. And again, that is why we are both here doing this, is because we have that alignment. And I also recognize that in my kind of spaces of alternative medicine, you might say, there is so much of that. And sometimes to a degree that then can cause harm, actually. Sometimes my spaces have too much of that. And sometimes your spaces have not enough to none of that. And so again, there's, the middle way and the aliveness and vitality that not only can be found, but I think can only be found in that kind of middle space. And so this what if I'm just here once again, as always, imagining what if the philosophy of standard Western medical practice became something that allowed for the integration of a sentence like that, where we are acknowledging and respecting and even consciously deferring to the body through an admission of, I mean, it has to start with an admission that we don't know everything, because we can't know everything, which is the entire reason why the scientific method exists in the first place, and why I agree with you that it is such a valid and necessary and needed path of exploration, but also cannot be the only one, because it cannot do everything for us, because there's just so much to know and so many ways to discover different knowings.
Yeah.
So I just want to say here, before we kind of begin to close out our Joan episode with some fun little rapid fire questions, to just once again articulate how deeply I respect you and how much I enjoy wading in these waters of not knowing alongside you, and how easy it is to wade in these waters with you, because there is such the thing that I feel supremely confident in is that there is no way in which we could offend and then therefore lose each other in relationship with one another, because everything that we communicate to one another just gets folded into that's interesting. I don't know about that. And maybe someday I'll try and find out more about that, but maybe I'm a little too busy. And so I just trust you in the experience you're having. And it's so easy to do that with you here. It's easy to extend that to you. It's easy to receive that from you. And it makes me feel really grateful to be your friend and to be your colleague and to be your creative partner in these endeavors. And it also just makes me feel really encouraged by the state of all, modern health and human care. Because if you are practicing this way and then you are also educating other people, not to tell them what to do, but to just say, I'm doing this and it's working really well for me in my personal life and it's working really well for me in how I professionally practice. That's modeling something for other practitioners who are really also extreme. I know because I speak to them on a regular basis, and so do you. They're really burned out with underneath the unsustainable pressure of this, be perfect, be correct. But that, it's not, again, we said this before, it's not working because it can't work. And so there's just all this freedom and just taking that off your shoulders and getting to be a human again and bringing your human curiosities and human experiences into the room with you when you're occupying the role of practitioner. So I love that I get to be here with you. And
me too.
I kind of want you to just read that whole entire document right now on the air.
Maybe, honestly, at some point I probably will. I feel like it's kind of who knows, but I feel like its own, there's so much nuance in what, when people boil it down to it's just science or just trust the science or don't trust the science. It's big pharma or anytime it's any kind of
always do this or always don't do this. I'm
already I'm going to go hang out somewhere else.
Totally.
And I mean, there's nuance and complexity and mostly one of my favorite practices is saying maybe. I say it to my kids a lot and it satisfies them in a way that's neat. We have this children's book that's about Zen stories. It's this panda that meets these kids. It's the cutest. I made a podcast about it. It's the power of maybe, and I read the story, and it's it's an old Zen story about this farmer and one thing happens to them and then the neighbor says, oh, what a good thing. And he's like, maybe. And then another thing happens and the neighbors say, what a bad thing. And he's like, maybe. And he just keeps saying maybe and things keep unfolding. And I think maybe is a great place to be. It's different than saying that there's no truth. It's different than saying that there isn't things that can harm you.
Right.
And and there's a body of knowledge of things that can harm you that's useful to know.
Yes.
Actually, there's a certain amount of any substance that will end your life.
Yes.
Water, anything. There's a certain amount. The dose makes the poison. There's certain principles that are that. That's a useful truth to live knowing if you want to continue to live.
Yes.
But that's different than all of these modes of even which is the right medicine to start or if medicine is right to start or there's too much complexity. There's too much of the way we describe what happens to bodies that is incomplete and in times really harmful.
Yeah.
And so it's very relaxing to let go of that.
Yes. As Elizabeth Gilbert once said, the truth is always a relaxing space to be in.
I love that.
Yeah, me too. The last thing I want to say about this before we move into rapid fire is I love that you ended this anecdotal piece of communication with talking about a story rooted in a Zen philosophy, because isn't it so interesting that very often these very same people who, based in their lived experience or their inherited bias or whatever, are really willing to validate the philosophies from other cultures, but are reticent to validate the medicine from those same cultures. Our willingness
That's a zinger.
I know, our willingness to say well, they had wisdom here, but that could not have possibly informed their wisdom in the practice of the care of the human body in their, come on. That to me, it requires a certain amount. I don't know. I think you have to be really, how I don't know, being raised in evangelicalism, it was there was this talking point of you almost have to have more faith to be an atheist. And I'm that's kind of how I feel about this. You almost have to have more faith or it's a greater reach to say there's no way they could have had any wisdom about what was going on in the body, even though they had all of this brilliant philosophy from all of these cultures and all of human history. There's nothing that they could possibly offer us like that.
So much
is
certainty.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm interested. I'm interested. So that's like, I'm interested. I'm not going to say, yes, I agree. If I haven't, I'm not going to like co-sign it.
Totally.
Like one of the things I said to you after is I'm afraid on this podcast, I'm going to become Dr. Oz. Cause like to me, sorry, whatever, like calling him out, but like, just shilling, if you take this supplement, then you'll save your life forever.
I feel confident that I can hold you to your own integrity to make sure that is not happening, Joan.
Thank you. But that's different than me being like, I'm not going to be hard against acupuncture. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like,
it is different.
There's space between those positionings. And I'm hanging out in the space between. I'm hanging out in the maybe. Even about things that I was trained about, I hang out in the maybe. I say maybe to patients all the time now. I'm like, this works in a lot of people. Let's find out.
Let's find out.
It's an experiment. Like literally, this is how I do my management plans now. It feels a lot more relaxing. And I think patients trust me more because I haven't guaranteed a solution that may or may not come to pass.
Yeah. And then if you think about the state their nervous system is in and kind of the foundational place of receptivity in their body regarding whatever it is that you're wanting to implement, like they're in a much more resourced place to be able to actually just run the experiment truly to see if this thing that's being tried is going to work because they're not coming in with a story of certainty about whether it will or won't work.
Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah.
That's good.
Now I wish people could see your face.
I'm like, oh, that is what I'm doing. That's neat.
Yeah.
This is what all of our sessions were like.
Yeah,
like,
that's right. I know, which is why we just decided to be like, let's record these and have them slightly differently. Yep. Love it.
Yes.
Well, okay, let's do some fun little rapid-ish fire. Some simple pointed questions, we'll say, instead of rapid fire. You kind of mentioned, we've got 5, and then we've got kind of a final kind of wrap-up reflection question. So question number 1, you kind of alluded to this or mentioned something about this earlier when you were speaking, but Joan, what else did you want to be when you were a kid?
The other thing that I thought I would be for my answer when adults asked me, which don't ask kids that. That's a good question. But like, I would say I wanted to be a teacher. And that was because they were the other authority figure in my life I adored and got and admired greatly. So I wanted to be like the teachers that I was, they're just like my surrogate parents. I was like, I want to be like you. Yeah. And then I realized I became a camp counselor in high school at like a sleepaway camp. And then it dawned on me, being a teacher is like crowd control. And I say that like with deep admiration and gratitude for teachers. That's not my calling. Like I was like, how do you do that? Like people are like, how do you do practice medicine? Like, how do you teach?
You're like, largely, I'm doing the one at a time thing. You're so right. The crowd. Oh boy, it's a specific gifting.
It's not for me. And so and then I was like, well, let's go with the backup, become a doctor, because that's I'm smart, I get good grades, and I want to help people. And those were my reasons.
And I know what
now
it
have
like
different reasons. Yeah, I know what it looks like.
Yeah.
It's very possible for me. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen it modeled. So, and I'm so grateful because those aren't the reasons necessarily that I'm in medicine now anymore. But like, it's not just those reasons. It's much more. And I'm glad I've landed here.
Me too. I'm also glad you landed here. Okay, question number 2. Who is your favorite public figure and why?
I realize I kind of have 2. Like when I'm thinking of public figures, I'm thinking of people that I guess mostly like social media or books or people out in the world that I'm like every time they speak or I read something that they write or I encounter their public offerings, I'm like, this is medicine for my soul.
Yeah.
So I've realized there's actually 2. There's more than 2 for sure, but the 2 that really I hold in highest esteem. One is Adrienne Marie Brown, who is the author of a series of books called Emergent Strategy. And I just think I guess one word is profit or whatever, but like she like cultivates healing ideas, I think, is some of the language she uses. And I find everything that she says and writes about to be just ring so true in my soul about just like a way to approach change and social change that includes our own humanity and our own needs. And I can't even fully articulate what she does, but I just recommend like go find a podcast that, or find her. Her Instagram is amazing. She has hilarious memes. That's like mainly what she does on there.
Oh, it's such a like a sanity inducing like place of levity on the internet. I just that alone is a public service. Yeah, I adore her. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's the one. And then the other one that similarly, it's sort of like, if my Instagram was only those two, then I could spend time on Instagram more than I do. And that's Alok. I actually am not remembering Alok's last name right now. I know they use they, them pronouns. I have all of their poetry, but like they are this beautiful example through their life of like complete like freedom of expression to be who you are, but also acknowledging the serious toll and threat that comes with as they live a non-binary, like assigned male at birth and still masculine, like, features, as well as very feminine
presentation
expressions of dress.
Yeah.
And I'll just say what we traditionally call masculine, feminine, because those are constructs too, but you know what I mean? Like, and also just like beautiful.
I was just thinking, I was like, it's a gorgeous weaving. Like I really experienced them as doing this really gorgeous weaving with their life. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And so much humor in their work, and just like gold springs out of their mouths. Yeah. So like those are my favorite people because they ground me back in myself and they inspire me and they're funny. Like that's who I want to be the biggest celebrities of the land.
Yes.
You know, is those two in particular.
Imagine what that would say about us as a culture if that was true. I love imagining that. Yes. Great answers. Yes. Great answers. Third question, what is a personal practice or ritual that you rely on to stay grounded in your body amidst the demands of your career?
Oh my gosh. So this is where I get to talk about Taylor Swift. So this past year, I've been on like this journey of pleasure activism, which is a term that Adrienne Brown uses, of like really like holding space and like scheduling in time to like do things simply for pleasure. So my personal practice for grounding myself in my body, especially this past year, has been like through, even before that, through dance. So when I first got back from my second mat leave in like the middle of the pandemic, I promised myself the only kind of like exercise or movement I would do would be that it was fun. So I discovered this guy called the Fitness Marshal on YouTube. And he has the best, they feel like real choreographed dances, but you can do them and you feel so good. I like literally did them this morning for my movement practice. Cause like when I need to just feel like I am like slaying and feeling powerful and so cool, then I do those moves. And I don't record myself doing them because I'm sure I don't actually look
Can you
cool,
like at least once maybe and just
definition
like send it to me? At least once? Okay, great.
Okay, baby. And so that was like, so I still do the spiritual practice of the Fitness Marshal to this day. And then now have folded in just like a deep obsession and admiration for the world building of Taylor Swift, because my short answer is she has made her whole life a musical for real. And she's very good at it. So I love musicals, and now her life's a musical, and you can follow all the clues. It's really fun. And so I am slowly like learning all of her songs by teaching myself the ukulele, by remembering how to play the piano so I can sing along to songs, because I did learn that as a child, and like dancing around. And so Taylor Swift, and then now even beyond that, some other like pop girlies are in there where I'm dancing and singing to them too. But just like fun, like delightful pop music, and like mostly Taylor Swift. I practice singing through her music and playing and dancing, and those are my absolute favorite ways to ground myself in my body.
Oh, I love that answer. I also just love that sentence of the spiritual practice of the Fitness Marshal, I think is what you said.
Yeah.
Fitness Marshal. That's what an intense name for like something that ultimately is like so fun and so not intense.
Right.
That's great.
Part of it, his last name is Marshall. His first name's Caleb. So I think he's doing a thing there.
Sweet. So, okay, I love it. Wow. Very cute. I'm going to have to look that up. Next question. looking back, is there a piece of advice that you'd give your younger self when you were just starting out on this journey? And we'll maybe say like this journey of health and human care.
Yeah. I think like the thing is like she couldn't have known any different, or like I just be like, keep going. You're not crazy. Like I think it would have to be just something kind of subtle like that. Just like you can't spoil the ending or else it ruins the journey.
Totally.
Even though it was hard and horrible in lots of different parts and different ways, that I wouldn't have actually learned it if I hadn't gone through those things. I would have learned something else, which would have been fine. But like, I like my life as it is now. So I think it's just like, listen to that voice that's questioning things. And you're right. It's hard.
Like I like that. You're not crazy and you're right. It's hard.
It hurts. I get it. You know?
Yeah. That's beautiful. What is a final rapid fire question? What is a simple pleasure or indulgence that you never compromise on, no matter how busy life gets? You already said Taylor Swift, but what is another one?
I know. Gosh, what is another one? I think it is like I move my body every day in some way, even if it's just like going for a walk. I'm thinking of something that's more an indulgence though. You know, I know like indulgence is sort of a funny term sometimes.
I know.
Also, I would say there's nothing I never compromise on.
Great answer. Ooh, look at you just usurping, finding the middle way of that question.
Because it's true, like now I've lost my streak. Like I'm like not in, I'm like lose a streak. So I'd actually say the things I already said, like, but I invite music into my life. I invite rest into my life. I am quite regimented about not going to bed late.
Ooh, great. Yes.
I notice when I don't do that. And I have a large collection of herbal teas. And that is something, like I don't even think of it, but it is a pleasure every day is to drink tea. I have given up caffeine for the past couple of years, and that has felt good to my nervous system and my body and how much anxiety I feel. And in its place, I have a wide variety. So every morning I'm like, which tea should I drink today? This ginger tea or this whatever tea. So that is a pleasure that I actually do start every day with.
That's beautiful. I like that. There's something about tea. There's something about coffee that's very, not in a bad way, but very obviously like kind of like, let's go. And there's something about tea that's like, let's just slow down for a second.
That sound. That's it.
Yeah. Well, final question. And this is, I'm going to state it as is. It is open to interpretation. However feels true for you and your body to answer this. Joan, what do you believe you're here for?
I believe I am here to have a good time, to feel alive and good in my body. That's a new belief, but it feels truer than other beliefs I used to have. And I believe a part of how I do that is by helping to bring humanity to the healthcare system specifically. Like that's a clear portion of it. Like I'm not planning to change careers. My heart is in that work and all the different ways I've gotten to be creative in exploring how to help impact the healthcare system. I have lots of different avenues, but that's a kind of a clear North Star. That is what I'm here for. But it's because it makes my life better to do it.
As your former coach, in addition to being your current colleague and collaborator, there's no better answer. I'm so pleased with this answer. Wow. Not surprised, also not surprised, but so pleased. That is beautiful. I can add nothing to that other than to say beautifully answered, truthfully answered, and I am so happy that that was your answer. I love it. Gorgeous. Well, then, very last thing, body dedication is you today. So what part of your body would you like to appreciate this week, Joan?
I had a couple. I was like, which of them am I going to say? I think I am going to dedicate this episode to my pelvic bone.
Yes, tell me more.
Did you see that one coming? I just have found recently, I've, worked with you and then I have a somatic experiencing therapist that I see in person now, and we do physical work. I've just come to understand that when I think of where I get creativity or knowledge, when I'm feeling creative, when I have ideas, or when I'm really grounded in myself, the place I feel that is in my pelvis. And I think about how my pelvic bone protects that cradle of life. Sounds extremely, but it's also accurate in that is where life has literally been cradled. It just, that's right. Anyway, it could be cheesy, but it's also true. Okay. And so, and the other thing about the bone itself I was thinking about is how it's got one of the largest, it's got very thick bone marrow inside of it. That's why if you need to have a bone marrow sampling, it comes from there, which is not pleasant, but it's because it's a good chance you'll get a sampling. And so that means actually you think of the bone as just the hard structure, and then the squishy wonderfulness is inside. But actually within the bone itself is also a rich vein of life, because those are all of the cells before they come blood cells. That's what's in there.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And when you really not only think about that, but right now I'm sitting on her and with her. And when I feel my body, a lot of times I'm feeling those joints, the hip joints, and that's just a region I can connect to a lot. I'm also aware, as I say it, this might be a region that some people really cannot connect to for lived experience reasons. And so
absolutely.
And I am giving dedication to this region for me today, because she holds life and she contains life and she is life, and she's so firm and strong. And I just think that's pretty cool.
What a great way to end it. It was this beautiful, poetic. I was my eyes were closed. I was I could listen to you go on for, and then you're and that's pretty cool.
I don't know how else to end that, but
you would have been a great teacher. Let's just clear this up right now. Let's just be clear about this. Yeah,
I am a teacher. Even the word doctor is Latin for teacher. The main thing I do with patients is teach them, and then I literally teach medical students. So it's very full circle what's happened in my life. Yeah.
And I'm picturing camp counselor Joan was a hoot. I know it. I know.
Just chronically overwhelmed. I was a teenager and they were 7. My son is almost 7. I'm not leaving him with teenagers overnight. What were we thinking?
But if there's going to be a teenager that I would leave my 7-year-old with overnight, I think it would be teenage Joan.
I appreciate that. I received that. Thank you so much.
Of course. Well, thank you for letting us all get to know you, letting me, first and foremost, get to know you better. And then I'm just going to go ahead and say thank you on behalf of everyone else listening for letting us get to know the beautiful person that is you a little bit better and a little bit more deeply. Thank you for taking us on the journey of Joan. And I'm so excited I have so many I'm really excited for my turn next week now too, because it was so wonderful getting to ask you questions, and I'm now really excited to be asked questions by you. So I'm looking forward to that next week. So I'll see you then, Joan.
I'll see you then, Jamie. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
This is Experiential Anatomy. Thanks for listening. I'm Joan Chan.
And I'm Jamie Lee Finch. Experiential Anatomy is co-hosted and created by us.
Amber Wyndham is the editor. Julia Wyndham is the supervising producer.
Senior producer is Elizabeth Wyndham. Aaron Beatty leads our community management.
Our theme music is Park Pier 3 by G's Guy.
If you have any thoughts, questions, or stories to share about this week's episode, email us at exanatomy@gmail.com.
Please follow, rate, and review on your favorite podcast platform. And remember to join us over at exanatomy.substack.com.
Experiential Anatomy is produced by Windhaven Productions. Yay!
Yippee! We did it.
That's our new theme song. Sorry, G's guy. You're
G's
out.
guy.